We see the Robinson family, consisting of John, Maureen, Penny, Judy, and Will, who are part of an astronaut crew aboard a spacecraft named Jupiter 2. They seem to be worried about something, but John decides to change the mood by offering to play a game of cards. He tries his best to focus on the game, although the others seem to feel a bit awkward about the whole thing. The family discusses what had happened on the Resolute space station, but are interrupted when the AI announcer tells them that they are nearing the entry phase of an unknown planet. Suddenly, there's an atmospheric disturbance and a hail of asteroids rain down on the spaceship as it tries to make a safe landing on the planet. An intense sequence follows as Jupiter 2 is forced to crash land onto an icy region. John tries to help Maureen as she gets stuck against a table and has also sustained a severe leg injury. After he helps her out, the family try to make their way out of the ship. However, the primary exit point is jammed and only Will is able to pass through it as he's the smallest member of the group. As the others move toward another exit, he takes a look at the snowy scene around him. The rest of the team finally make it to the surface, but the Jupiter ship sinks into the water right after that. A flashback shows John meeting his family in a surprise visit, but that's when they find out about the impending danger to Earth and are forced to evacuate their home planet. The family take off their protective gear after Maureen spots John's torn suit and realizes the air isn't toxic. None of the other Jupiter spacecrafts can be tracked, so the family try to keep their spirits up. John worries that they are going to lose their ship once the water freezes, so he decides to retrieve the essential items. He suggests using Will to re-enter the ship to get the supplies, but Maureen is strictly against it. Even Will is a little hesitant in doing this, but John ignores that and prepares him for the mission. That's when Judy jumps into the water, despite her father's disapproval. She manages to make it inside the ship through the second entrance, but the water starts to freeze, and an intense sequence follows where she has to drop the battery she tried to recover. Unfortunately, Judy freezes with the water just before she can make it to the surface, and even Maureen's condition gets serious as she starts to lose consciousness. Things go from bad to worse when John isn't able to break through the ice, but Will luckily points out that there's some magnesium nearby. Realizing that he can use it to melt the ice, John sets out on a mission to collect the magnesium along with his son, leaving Penny alone with Maureen. In another flashback, we see Penny shopping for a gift for her dad, but Maureen doesn't look too enthusiastic about it. Now Penny has a chat with Judy, and we learn that the family has been sent to this planet as part of the 24th colony so that they can populate it with a new human civilization due to the impossible living conditions on Earth. Meanwhile, John and Will make their way to the magnesium supply and try to bond for a bit. They locate the material after a brief struggle and try to harvest it as soon as possible. John has to be careful so that he doesn't ignite the magnesium, and Will feels guilty for what's happening to Judy. Unfortunately for him, the ground cracks and he falls through a secret passage. Meanwhile, Maureen struggles to keep up with her injury. So Judy decides to use her medical knowledge to help Penny perform an impromptu surgery on their mother's leg. She struggles at first, but Judy is eventually able to guide her through the process. Later, Will wakes up and is eventually able to contact John after a brief moment of panic. He finds himself in the middle of a forest filled with all kinds of vegetation and wildlife. However, he's too far away from the magnesium field, so John has to make the difficult decision of leaving his son in the forest in order to save Judy first, as she doesn't have much time left before her oxygen supply runs out. Will is scared to be alone, but figures he has to wait till his father comes back for him. Now we learn that there was a clearance test to be approved for the colonizing mission, where Will had a nervous interview. Judy had managed to keep his spirits up, but Maureen already knew that he wasn't approved. Back to the present, Maureen is able to survive the operation and has a touchy moment with Penny, who is also trying to catch her breath. Here we learn that Maureen had actually called in for a personal favor and managed to pull some strings in order to get Will accepted into the colony program. Now, at the forest, the little astronaut starts to panic after hearing some animal sounds, so he tries to contact other possible survivors, but without much luck. He decides to explore the surrounding area and finds some mysterious structures that share a strong resemblance to the nature found on Earth. He tries to radio for support again, but this time he hears a troubling screech and then he comes across a crashed spacecraft. However, he realizes it's not a Jupiter ship and starts a video log to record his latest discovery. Suddenly, he spots an alien with only its lower half and tries to run away from it. The monster is surprisingly quick and chases after Will despite its incapacity. Then Will climbs up a tree and is confronted by the top half of the alien that's stuck to a branch. It tries to attack the boy but is unable to reach him. Meanwhile, John makes it back to the women and begins to rescue Judy, but Maureen is upset with him for abandoning Will. A flashback shows the time when Maureen tells John about the acceptance to the 24th colonist group. That's when we learn that the husband and wife were actually going to get a divorce, due to which they got into an ugly custody battle. Now, back to Will and his strange encounter with the alien monster, who tried to attack him at first, but is now trying to be friendly, which encourages Will. He tries to communicate with the alien and realizes that it's dying without its legs. However, things get worse when a fire starts to spread in the forest. Meanwhile, it also begins to rain in the icy area, thus negating all efforts Judy's family has been making to save her from freezing. Will tries to contact his dad, but once again, it's of no use, so he loses hope. With nothing else to do, he decides to save the alien by reuniting it with its lower half. He starts to cry as the smoke begins to envelop the forest, but then the alien gets his powers back and saves him from the flames. After observing Will, the alien decides to transform into a humanoid so that he can build his trust. The Robinson family begin to cry as they realize that they are not going to be able to rescue Judy, but luckily Will arrives with his new alien friend. John and the others are suspicious at first, but then Will convinces the alien to save his sister, and he does so with ease. The family is reunited in an emotional moment, and then Will asks the alien to keep them warm with his heating powers. 12 hours earlier, we see what happened at the Resolute space station before everyone had to evacuate due to an emergency. It turns out that this situation was caused by the alien in the first place. It was attacking all the residents of the ship, and it led to widespread panic, in between which a mysterious woman tricks a scientist named Dr. Smith and steals his code to assume his identity. She uses the access codes to enter his Jupiter ship and meets a couple of mechanics named Don West and Tam Roughneck. Realizing that she needs people for protection, she invites them to her ship and they accept. They also had to go through the same landing difficulties, and their ship ends up crashing right next to a cliff. Don wakes up and Tam doesn't seem to be nearby, so he tries to work with Smith to try and get out of their restraints. He uses a knife and some oil to free himself, and a tense sequence follows as he and Smith barely manage to escape the ship before it falls off the cliff. Now we see the family trying to understand the alien, and Maureen identifies him to be a synthetic robot. Will explains how he found his new friend, and then he asks him to revive the Jupiter ship. The alien obeys his orders without any hesitation, but John remains suspicious of this unknown being, especially after seeing a scar on Will's spacesuit. Meanwhile, Don and Smith try to scavenge for some supplies, and they find Tam in the middle of their efforts. She appears to have died due to the crash, but Don doesn't have time to worry about his fallen comrade, so he steals her boots and fires a flare, hoping to attract other survivors. Now the family enters their Jupiter ship, and Judy tries to deal with her trauma, while John and the robot run into each other and try to analyze themselves. Don spots what appears to be a survivor's ejector flag, and then he convinces Smith to join him as they make their way forward with some supplies and a chicken. The Robinson family get to work inside the ship, but Will is the only one who doesn't seem to have a problem with the robot for now. Later, Judy meets the alien and thanks it for saving her, but it doesn't seem to understand what she's trying to say. Then Maureen is given a temporary solution to her leg problem, and she's able to walk again. Now Penny has to deal with some typical father-mother banter, but then she spots an explosion and informs the others about it. Maureen believes that it might be coming from another Jupiter ship, so she decides to check out the area with John and instructs the girls on how to get their ship out of the water. She decides to bring Will and the robot along as well, much to John's disappointment. Meanwhile, Don and Smith continue their journey and get into an argument over the necessity of psychiatrists. they find an astronaut named Angela Goddard and think she's dead, but she suddenly comes back to life, much to their surprise. Back at the Jupiter 2, Penny and Judy argue over a pack of Oreos that Maureen had asked her to bring along for the journey. Maureen and the others come across another crashed spacecraft but are unable to find any survivors, so they carry on. Now Penny panics after noticing an upcoming storm and wants to alert the others, but Judy is against the idea of leaving the ship to look for them. Despite this, Penny fires the blast engines and frees the Jupiter from the icy water much quicker than what was expected. She also decides to use a space vehicle called the Chariot to rescue her family, but unfortunately it requires some assembly. Now John and the others carry on with their search, but to no avail, so Maureen asks the robot to lead them to his spacecraft. After they hear the same screeching sound on the radio, John is against the idea, but Maureen forces Will to order the alien into showing them the way. Now Dawn and Smith contemplate saving Angela, as she's definitely going to slow them down if they bring her along. Despite this, Dawn eventually decides to carry her because he doesn't want to abandon a survivor. Meanwhile, Penny is finally able to assemble the chariot and takes off with it, even though she doesn't have a driver's license. Judy tries to stop her but can't make it in time. Penny comes across a dead end and tries to contact her mom, but it's of no use, so she chews on an Oreo and activates the chariot's winter mode. Dawn fires another flare and then he has a chat with Smith about her brother, whom he reminds her of. The storm grows closer as Maureen and the others come across the crashed alien spaceship. She and John investigate the vehicle and find some odd machinery inside. In the meantime, Will finds a strange seed and adds it to his collection, after which he tries to teach the robot how to play catch with a baseball. In the middle of their game, the alien presses a button that activates a memory and a map inside the spaceship. Maureen checks it out and learns that they are not even in the Milky Way galaxy. However, Will is shown a recording of what his alien buddy had done back on the Resolute station. He panics and runs away, but the robot goes after him as he doesn't seem to recall his past actions. Will confronts the alien over what he did and tries to use his power of command to instruct him to fall off a cliff, but stops at the last moment when he sees that he is still blindly following his orders. Meanwhile, Dawn and Smith take shelter with Angela, but Smith decides to go look for other survivors instead. Will and the robot reunite with John and Maureen, while Penny continues to look for them. It starts to rain diamonds, so the humans take cover while the robot fires a light to catch Penny's attention. The chariot arrives and rescues the team, after which the robot hangs on to the vehicle for support. Maureen acknowledges that she was wrong and that she should listen to John more often, and that's when they're spotted by Dawn. He looks for the final flare to catch their attention, but realizes that he was tricked by Smith, who took it along with her. She fires the flare instead and is rescued by the family, but doesn't even mention Dawn or Angela. A tense sequence follows as the storm rages and continues to gain ground, but our heroes manage to reach the Jupiter station in time. After everyone gets off, Smith is alarmed when she sees the robot, but Will reassures her that it's harmless. And that's the end of part 1. Like, share and subscribe to show some love, and I'll upload part 2 ASAP. Before I go, make sure you press that bell icon as well. Take care. See you soon.